Hello everyone, we're back. I'm going to do an update on my Mania pieces for days 1 through 7. Today's the 8th and I haven't started yet today, so you won't see today's, but I'll do 1 through 7. Forgot the poster. Here is my Mania plan chart. I decided to print everything in small pictures and then stick them on the calendar on the days that they go, so I could keep track of what I was doing. So May 1st is up here, and I do 20 pieces for the year 2020, so it will end down here on the 20th. These ones with the yellow dots, those were previous Mania starts that are not finished yet, so they're carryover WIPs. And I like working on them on the day that I first started them for Mania. So they're already all stuck on here. Most of them I've already done, actually. I know that I'll be working on Sleeping Princess on Saturday, day and night, down here on the 18th. And then this is Hoity Toity, which I started a couple of days early on my birthday, which I always pick one new start and do that. And for the one that I start early on my birthday, it automatically gets put into the last day, the 20th. So I have, so I work on everything else first and get a break from it, and then I can work on it again at the very end. I'm trying to kind of alternate between a new start and a old WIP. I do include some WIPs always in my Mania pieces that weren't Mania starts. I just pull a couple WIPs that are in my WIP pile and include those. And they will have a red dot on them that has a big W on it when I do those. So first, on May 1st, I did Monster Wonder Whale. That is what the pattern says it's called. On the inside, I didn't realize on the inside on the pattern it has an English translation. It is a pattern I got from Owl Forest Embroidery in Russia. And it came as a kit. I'm using the kit threads, but not the kit fabric. I was at a retreat with Leslie Lafleur under the Sea Fabrics, and she was stitching this piece on a piece of her fabric, which is Aine, A-I-N-E, opalescent. And I saw it and just thought, oh, that's gorgeous. I need to do that. So I bought a piece of that fabric from her right there. She had some fabric there for sale. And kitted it up right then. That was a while ago. I haven't started it. I didn't start it right then. I've had it waiting for Mania. I was so excited about it that I decided to start this one first. Let me move that up just a little bit. I left these on here for a minute because I'm going to tell you something about them. This is what I say, Monster Wonder Whale by Owl Forest Embroidery. This is what it will look like when it's finished. Mine is on 40 count Aine, A-I-N-E, opalescent from Under the Sea Fabrics. It's a very peachy, light peachy pink color. It's gorgeous. I had a viewer ask me where I put the pattern when I'm stitching, and I always take it off because you never show the pattern on your videos, right? So I've just turned this one inside out, so it's just a blank piece of paper. We'll just pretend this is the pattern. So when I'm stitching, I make a working copy, I fold it all up to the part that I'm working on so it's a more manageable size. And then I will use a needle minder magnet, and I will stick it to the fabric wherever it fits. So if I was working down here and I didn't need to see this up here, I would scoot it down. This really is the back side. I know you can kind of see it showing through. So that I could look at the pattern and then stitch right here. So I never have to, so I can, it saves time, and it is just more enjoyable for me if the pattern is right next to I'm working. I hate looking over to the pattern if you have it like sitting somewhere and then back to your stitching and then over. And the older I get, the easier it is to lose my place. I can't figure out where on the pattern I am on here. So I use a highlighter a lot more too. But I love having it magneted right close to when I'm stitching, like, so here's it clamps into my lap frame right here. And my hand is going around right here. So I can't ever have it magneted so it's sticking over the edge like this, because I will invariably hit it every time and it drives me crazy. But I will, because sometimes you just don't have enough space, empty space around where you're stitching to magnet the pattern. I will stick it so it's hanging like clear off the edge over here, because I need to be able to get to my stitching. Because it's not in my way over here. My hand is going back and forth right here. And the clamp is right here. So it's clear up here. It doesn't matter. Or I'll have it sticking clear up here. But that is how I keep the pattern right next to me. And I usually have 2 needle minders. The other one usually holds, I make a working copy of the legend. If the legend is huge over several pages, I will cut and paste it up just so I can see the symbols and what I need to see on it, because sometimes you don't need the whole color name. You just need the number and the symbol, depending on how you've labeled your threads. So I may cut and paste to make this a more manageable size, but this one was small, so it didn't matter. And then I'll cut it out, and I quite often have another needle minder holding that somewhere right here so I can easily see what symbol goes to what color. So that is Monster Wonder Whale. And that was my progress for May 1st. May 2nd was a carryover WIP from Mania 2019, and that was R-Kade by Long Dog Samplers. It will look like this when it's finished. I am doing it on a piece of 40 count Picture This Plus Conifer. And I am using Silks for You, a hank of silk that I bought from Silks for You, S-I-L-K-S, the number 4 and the letter U. She has an Etsy store. May be closed down during the quarantine, I'm not sure, but it is I don't have the number of the color. Silks for You just has numbers on their colors, but it's very autumn colors: orange, yellow, green, and brown. And then I bought another color of Silks for You from her that is more of a really light sagey green color that I am using just for that. This strip goes clear across the pattern, that little flowery strip. And then I'm also using it for most of the hearts. You can see that this heart is a little lighter in this one in the pattern, just for a little bit of a lighter pop in the fabric. It's really hard to show on camera the colors. I'm sure you're looking at it and thinking, why is she doing that color on that fabric? It shows up a lot better in person. I really like how it kind of tries to disappear into the fabric, but doesn't. I always thought it might look like a very dense, dark forest where the sunshine's just coming in little pieces. But I am really loving this. I worked this Mania day. I had a little bit of this tree, bottom of this tree done down here, and I finished all the rest. I think I had just this part. I finished all the rest of the side of it and came up here to start that next tree. I think that it's a column of trees. You could probably interpret it as several things, but that's what it looks like to me, a forest of trees. Oh, here it is. I'm just going to let you look at it again. It's a beautiful, beautiful pattern. Thoroughly enjoying working on this. May 3rd was Sky Blue Street. Okay, this piece has serious issues. well, let me tell you. It is the most gorgeous pattern from Sodastitch. They're in South Korea. I ordered it on Amazon. I started in the middle right here. So I did just this little part right here and then over to here, the dress shop. That's what I have done so far. When I started this last year for Mania, I didn't have a 40 count piece. I knew I wanted it on white because I wanted those colors to be as bright and vibrant as they are. And I knew that would look better on white. But I didn't have a piece of 40 count white linen, which is what I wanted to do it on. But I did have this piece of 36 count white linen, and it has to be a really long piece of fabric. It's 546 by 97, so it's a long piece, almost a yard long, depending on what count you're doing it on. So I had this piece of 36 count white linen that I had that was big enough. I could make a long enough strip if I did 2-inch borders instead of 3-inch borders. So I went ahead and started it on that. 36 count is not my favorite because one strand is not quite enough coverage for me on some projects you like that open lacy look, but for most of my projects I like the more dense where you can really see the color look, saturated color. But I thought, oh, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. I'll just start it on this anyway. And why I didn't, 2 strands sometimes on 36 count is almost too squishy depending on what kind of fiber you're using. And I don't know what I was thinking. I started it with 1 strand of DMC on 36 count white, which I should have known that I was not going to be happy with that, especially for this pattern. Because every time I look at the picture, those colors are dense and saturated. I love the way this model photo looks. So I worked on it last year for Mania. I think I pulled it out for maybe a day or 2 in between and then pulled it out again. No, actually last September, this was my focus piece. So I worked on it for the whole month of September, but not very much because every day I was supposed to get out and work on it. That coverage was bothering me. And so I would work on it for a little while and then go work on something else, or I wouldn't stitch it all that day. You know how you make excuses to not work on the project that there's something bothering you about it. So this is where I am right now. I worked on it for my Mania day and finished the dress shop. It just had the bottom purple right here. So I finished the dresses, this upper part, this words, and this window, this second window up here. And the whole time I was working on it, I just kept thinking oh, I hate the coverage on this. And then I'd think, it's fine. It's fine. Just, you've got so much done already. You just need to keep going. It'll be fine. Just keep working. So I'd keep working and keep working and convince myself that it was gorgeous. And then I would see, as I was putting it away, I saw the model photo again and just went, it's not fine. It is not fine. And the whole time I work on it is just like drudgery because the whole time I'm thinking, it's not okay. So I'm going to put it up really close so you can see. Let's see if I can get the camera to focus on that. The coverage maybe. You can see on this little mailbox. This was a test I did right here with 2 strands of black on 36 count to see if it would be too squishy or if it'd be okay. And this little section of black right here, I actually went back over what was there and added 1 more strand. Just did X's on top of what was already there with another strand of DMC. So it's 2 single-stranded X's on top of each other. As a test, I didn't do all of the black. So all of this down here is black as well. And I just went over just this little part. This side is gray, but this side is all black. Can you see the difference? How much better that is supposed to look? You can see right here in this dark red how much of the fabric you can see through there. And then kind of as a test, I started the porch over here. There's a porch of the next shop over. I started using 2 strands. So this is what I'm thinking. I either need to restart it on a piece of 40 count white something, linen or even weave, or even 1/1 on 25 count would be fine if I had any of that, which I didn't. Or I'm wondering about restitching over everything I already have on here with 1 more strand, like I did on that little test on the mailbox. And looking at the test that I did compared to like the test I did with 2 strands, the porch and that little black test piece right here, compared to what it looks like when you just do another strand over the top of what's there, they look so similar. I think it would be fine. I think it would be fine to put 1 more strand over the top of what's already on here and then continue on using 2 strands. I don't think you'll be able to tell the difference that I did that. I will have to pull out the little bit of back stitching that's on here. There's not a lot. There's just a little bit here and there because it's really hard to stitch the X's underneath where you have already back stitched, which is supposed to be sitting on top of the X's. So I think I'll just pull the back stitching out, stitch over that extra strand, and then put the back stitching back in. So that is my plan for this one. And I feel once I made that decision, I felt so much better about it. I was excited to work on it again. I was happy. So I think that was the good choice because otherwise this was just going to be drudgery. And it's a large piece and it's going to take a while. And I don't like it when there's something bothering you about a piece. If it's a small piece, you can just kind of push through and just get it done. But when it's a really large piece like that, it ends up being in your WIP pile. Ends up being one of your oldest WIPs because you hate working on it. So that is my story on Sky Blue Street. I started another Mania start on this same fabric, and we'll talk about that one problem in a minute. Using the called for DMCs on that. All right, we're up to Monday, May 4th. Oh, which happens to be the other piece. Funny that I started those back to back for Mania 2019. This is Patchwork Sampler by Jan Houtman. Jan Houtman. It looks like just random colors to me, but there is a color chart in the called for. It has a list of called for colors, and the chart actually has different symbols for the different colors. I had, as you know, I had decided to I was going to use my overdyed silks that I'd had left from lots of other 3 chatelaine projects, several projects that used overdyed silks. I have a whole bunch left from those projects. So I just have this big bag of silks, which, this was some of them, silks left over. Some of them are new silks that I had purchased and then didn't end up using. Anyway, I had this big bag of overdyed silks, and I thought I'm just going to, as I get to each new motif, I'm just going to pull a bag out and do that as the next color. It's going to totally be a patchwork quilt. It'll look fine. Well, as I got going, it didn't look fine. I wasn't happy with how the colors were coming together. I didn't like the colors I had chosen and how they looked with each other. Which, I think if I just kept going, the more colors you got on there, it would look better and better. Because I like patchwork quilts where it really is just your scraps of fabric and you don't do any kind of color planning. It's just scraps, and that's what it looks cool when it's all put together. So I think it would have looked okay if I just keep going. But it's also on that 36 count piece of white linen because it was the only fabric I had last year when I started this piece and I wanted to start it. So I was also having the same problems. Not as much of a problem on this one because silks are a little bit fatter than DMC cotton. But it's still, I could still tell, just looking at it, I was not happy with the coverage. You could see a lot of the fabric showing through especially the darker colors. This dark blue right here, all the fabric that's showing through that. I finished this on the Mania day that I worked on it. I finished this middle part of this dark purple and started this teal color. It's Darling from Mrs. Seda Silks. And same thing. It was just drudgery to work on it. The colors were bothering me. The fabric was bothering me. I think if it was just the colors, I could have kept going thinking it'll look better as I get more colors on here. It'll look better. Or if it was just the coverage on the 36 count one strand of floss, I would have thought, oh, but the colors are gorgeous. It's okay. I'll just keep going. But to have both of those problems on this project just turned it into, this was my Thursday piece for the last 2 months. And every Thursday, I'd either just work on it for an hour and then go work on something else. Or Thursdays just turned into this really busy day where I just didn't get much stitching done. And I think part of that was mental. I was not excited to work on it. So for this piece, I have actually made the decision to restart it on a different piece of fabric. And instead of just pulling any old floss out of my bag of flosses, I actually went through, dumped them all out, and decided I was going to pick 3 colors. I chose green, purple, and blue. I was just going to do the cool colors, those 3. So I pulled out everything out of the bag that was green, purple, or blue. The pattern actually calls for 32 colors. So I thought, okay, I'm going to choose 32 colors. So I just, of all the green, purple, and blues, I laid them all out on the floor, table, and just started pulling out ones that didn't look like they went together, didn't look good with the rest of the colors. Just started pulling those out until I was down to 32 colors. And I was happy with those 32, how they all looked together. So I thought, okay, it'll still look like a patchwork quilt because it's definitely not there's probably a word for that where the palette is gorgeous together, or whereas the palette has more different tones, different color families in it. Anyway, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Sharon, you're probably talking to me right now. Saying, yes, Brenda, we get it. At least I hope that's what you're saying. So what I'm going to do, I have this piece of 22 count Hardanger in my stash. So I'm going to do, Hardanger is almost like Aine in that it has kind of little squares, but it's not, it's just 2 strands going one way and 2 strands going the other way with a little bit of a bigger hole in between. So to be like working on linen, if you could see the 2 and the 2 better. Anyway, so I'm going over one little square. There are 22 of them per inch, so it ends up being, if I did this on 40 count white linen over 2 threads, that would be 20 stitches per inch. This is 22 count Hardanger, so those little 2 threads together, there are 22 of those per inch. So these stitches will be 22 per inch, so a little bit smaller than working on 40 count fabric. Or if you were working like Heaven and Earth Design, if you were working on that on 25 count fabric, that is 25 threads per inch. So if you were working over 2 threads, like you usually do, that would be, what is that? 25 divided by 2, which is 12.5 stitches per inch. But on Heaven and Earth Designs, a lot of people do 1 over 1 on 25 count. So because you're working over every single thread, that is 25 stitches per inch. So this is right in between working over 2 threads on 40 count or working over 1 thread on 25 count. This is right in between at 22 stitches per inch. And I am really liking it. I've used Hardanger before for Hardanger, but I haven't ever cross-stitched on it. And I'm really, it's stiffer fabric, much more like Aine. How Aine is so stiff, it's stiffer like that. But not, I don't think it's quite as stiff as Aine. But I love how it feels. I love how it looks. I'm happy with the coverage. It's gorgeous. I had a piece that was big enough to restart it. Last time I was over here, I started at this corner, and it's just so, I hate stitching the same pattern twice. I rarely ever do that because I don't like it. I don't like even doing the same thing over again. So instead of restarting right here where I already was, I started at this corner so I could do something different. And then what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to start at this corner with, and just kind of move out like this, and I'm going to go through all the purples that I pulled out. And then I'll either move like down this direction or maybe move over this direction, and I'll do all the blues. I'll go through all the blues in the bag. And then I'll start maybe down this direction or maybe down here through the middle with all the greens, however far that gets me. And then if this is the purple section and this is the blue section and this is the green section, maybe we'll do some blues down here, a little bit of purple over there, whatever color it's not right next to, and see what that looks like. Well, it will be another experiment, and hopefully I like it better than this experiment, the first experiment. I don't know if you'll be able to see them very well, but this is all my blues. A couple of teals. Just different colors of blues. These are all my greens. And these are all the purples. I didn't count them. I have no idea if I have, just having them all spread out, there seemed about the same number of purples, blues, and greens, but I didn't count them, so there might be more of one. There might be more blues than purples or more purples than greens. I don't know. But that was what I decided to do. And I feel so much better. I'm excited to work on that piece. I keep thinking, oh, if I finish the working on my Mania piece assigned for the day, maybe I can get back to that one. So that's a really good sign. If I'm excited to work on it, that's a good sign. The next day, May 5th, was a new start. This is a collection of freebies from Little House Needleworks that they released all in one chart, except for these two were brand new, had never been released before. The rest of these were freebies, but these two were new releases that hadn't been released before. I have no idea if these became freebies after that or if this is the only chart you can buy these two in. The 6-star game board and the little giving bunny. I had a copy of this. This is the one I'm doing. Right here, the one with the flag. A little patriotic. It's called Mini Hometown Game Board, I believe. And this chart is called Something Old, Something New. But I had been given this freebie, gosh, 15 years ago at a retreat from Tree of Life Samplings. But the copy I had was a little faded. It wasn't a great copy, so some of the symbols were hard to see. So I was very happy to, you guys helped me, as I talked about that in my last video. You helped me find this chart. Thank you. I am doing this on did I write it on here? No. I wrote it somewhere. Where did I put it? It is 30 count. I think it's 30 count beige. By weeks, I think is what the... I started it on 25 count bone even weave because that's what I had pulled and put it in the bag. The color was great, but I remember telling you and looking at my page where I figured out the size. This little game board, looks like a little checkerboard, is just the right size to fit on top of the half size a bobbin box. These little half size ones. It's just the exact right size to fit on the top. I saw it where they had done that at Keepsakes in Cincinnati in their store. They had it out to see. It was fabulous. So I remember on the page I had done the math for 28 count, 14 stitches over 2, 14 stitches per inch, that it would be the right size. So then when I pulled out and the piece I had in there was a 25 count, I thought, oh, I guess 25 count, 28 count, they're pretty close. So I start stitching on it. And the more I stitch, the more I keep thinking, you better check that math. Before you get any further, you better check that math. So I checked the math and realized, oh, if you do this over 2 on 25 count, it will actually be too big. It won't fit on the top of this box. So then I did the math again for 14 count, trying to find a piece. Okay, so what am I looking for? 28 count? Let's check that 28 count exactly. 28 count is going to come, it's really tall and narrow. So it was going to come right to the edge this way, but it was going to have a little bit of space on the sides. So then I had this piece of 30 count, which is right in between. That is right in between, 30. I did the math for 32 count and it would have worked, but it would have been quite small. So I did the math for this 30 count piece of fabric that I had, and it was perfect. It was not right to the edge, not too small. It was going to fit. It will have some gaps on the side, so I'm actually going to add a little bit to the pattern on the sides to make it a little more look good for this size. So I had to restart it on a different piece of fabric, and then something else happened. I can't remember. And I had to pull it out and start again. I can't remember. Anyway, it's 30 count weeks beige, I believe. It will be in the description box. I will find where I wrote it down, and it will be in the... Oh, wait, I know. Yes, 30 count weeks beige is what is written on the tag. It almost has a slight green cast to it. Or yellow. It's kind of a yellowy. And this is how much I have done. This is the piece I have assigned to work on in July. It's my patriotic piece. I added a tree. It just had the one little tree and it ended right here. I've added a little tree to come over a little further, and then I'm going to do I'll do some stars and a scroll or little something along the side to make it just a little bit wider on both sides. Enjoyed that. Loved working on it. I am doing a classic Colorworks conversion of the DMC that it calls for. Oh, the other interesting thing was that this freebie that I have originally from 15 years ago only has 7 colors in it. But this new, this version where they released it with all of these other patterns has a couple of more. It just has a floss list for all of the patterns together. So I don't have a floss list for just this. But it had a couple more colors. It had 2 colors of green in it, and my old freebie chart only has 1 color of green. And the house on here, this house is red, and this one is brown, I think. On my freebie chart, one house is going to be red, yeah, and the other house is brown. But on the freebie chart, they're both brown. It's like 2 colors of brown. It's not red. So they made a couple changes to the freebie chart when they released it in this pattern. I'm making the house red because I like the house red. And I only used 1 color of green. I didn't use 2 colors of green. So I'm using the colors that this called for, converted to classic Colorworks colors that are extremely similar to the DMC that it calls for. Wow, this was supposed to be a quick update. We're already at a half an hour. Oh my word. Let's move along, shall we? May 6th is a Stitcher shelf, a stitching shelf by Heaven and Earth Designs. The artwork is by Amy Stewart. It looks like this. I started at this corner, so I'm over to here halfway through this window. There's a lady sitting in front of a window stitching, and outside the window you can see the hot air balloons. I was right here just starting the top of these balloons, and I was able to finish that column and then come up and start one square of the next column. I had several viewers ask questions about how I do Heaven and Earth Designs and why I have all these threads everywhere. There is a video on my channel called Boss Daughter Stitches a HAED, or I can't think of what the name of it is. It definitely has Boss Daughter in the title, and it definitely has HAED in the title. Where Catherine showed you, she did a video, a Stitch With Me video, where she actually showed you how she stitches a HAED. I stitch a HAED very similar. We both use the parking method. I do it just a little bit differently. We both do one 10 by 10 square at a time. She snakes along doing hers like this, or maybe like this. I start at the top of a column and I just work down. Then I start at the top of the next column and I work down. And then I start at the top of the next column and work down. You can see, I'm sure you'll be able to see when I'm done, if you hold it in just the right light, you'll be able to see some ridges of where those columns were. And I am okay with that. If you are not okay with seeing those ridges, then don't do it this way. You would probably want to do the diagonal parking method. Or you can do it where you kind of do a zigzag kind of an edge as you go so that you don't get those column lines. You can only see those column lines if you hold it just right, but I am fine with that. Doing it the way I do it makes my brain happy, and I enjoy working on it, and I enjoy the process, and this isn't going to be done for 20 years probably. This is going to be my May 6th Mania project for the next 20 years. And I am okay with that. I love working on it. I enjoy every minute I work on this. I am totally okay with that. I have started using this is not pre-gridded fabric. This is just 25 count white even weave. And I'm doing 1/1 with the called for DMC. I used to mark the squares, the edges of the squares with a pencil, because this is really dark and it will cover it up, except for this light part of the window. I would have had to have been careful right there. But I started using this marking pen with my other Heaven and Earth design, mini 4 seasons, and I love it. So I'm going to start using this now. It's by Dritz. The name of the company is Dritz, D-R-I-T-Z. I bought it at Joann's. It's in the just notions section, needles, pins, things you would be using. Quilter, this is a marking pens are usually used by quilters or people sewing clothing who are marking the fabric. It's a disappearing, it says Dritz has several different pens to choose from, and they have a couple of different disappearing pens to choose from. They have one that is water soluble and one that is air and water soluble. The disappearing ink one is the air soluble one. And they had a regular point and a fine point. So I got the fine point disappearing ink. This is the air soluble one. Turn it over on the back and see if it's air soluble or water soluble. I don't want to have to wash this project. I could if I had to, but I don't want to. So I like that it's air soluble. It actually disappears 2 days completely One day I can, if I work on it the next day, I can barely see where those lines were, but I have to remark them to make it usable. I'll put a mark on here so you can see what it looks like. I love the fine point because you need to, it's 25 count fabric and you need to get in between those threads to make a straight line. This is what it looks like. It's purple, it's nice and dark. But because it's disappearing ink, you have to remark it. Like I only work on mine once a week on Saturday. So by the time I pull it out by the next Saturday, all the marks are gone. So you have to remark it. But I only mark, I'll be working on these next 2 or 3 squares next coming down. So I'll mark those 2 or 3 squares and then I'll come out here and mark these 2 or 3 squares next to it in case I need to park a thread over here. And then I do several going down so that I can park down. So that's the kind of pen I use. Love it. Completely disappears. I had my piece of paper magneted on over the top of part of it, and I noticed that the marks that were underneath that piece of paper took a little longer to disappear, but they were still gone within a week. Completely gone. You can't see anything. So if you accidentally get it on your stitching as you're marking that line, the part that's already stitched, it just disappears. It just goes away. But I do live in a very dry, I don't know how your climate would affect how fast or slow it disappears. I live in a very dry climate. Utah is very dry. It's a desert. We quite often have humidity in the single digits. You can watch lots of YouTube videos about the parking method. Basically, for me, it just means for this little 10 by 10 square that I'm working on, there are some threads already parked there. I pick a color, I stitch all of the squares that are that color in that little 10 by 10 squares. I stitch all the symbols of that symbol in that little 10 by 10 square. And then I always work downwards. So I know that the next thing I'm going to stitch is the next square down. So I look at the next square down, and if that symbol is used in that square, I park the thread in the next square where that symbol is going to be used. I always start from the bottom right corner when I stitch. I go from the bottom right to the top left. I stitch backwards for most people, but for me, that's where I always know that I will start from the bottom right. So I always park the thread in the bottom right of the next space where that symbol is going to be used. And then I'll choose the next color, and I do all the symbols of that color in that little square, and then I park that thread in the next place where it's going to be used. If it's not used in the square right underneath, I will travel the thread across the back and park it. Maybe it's used in the square after that. And I'll even go clear down to the square after that if that's the next place it's used. The back of my HAEDs look like a rug. It is thick floss because I am carrying threads all over back there and I don't care. Normally I'm very good about carrying threads on my other projects. For the parking method on the HAEDs, the way I do it, there's going to be more floss on the back than there's going to be on the front, and I am fine with that. It's DMC. It's okay. It's the only way I can stitch a HAED and enjoy it, and I'm okay with it. I've just decided that I'm okay with it. So you just park the thread in the next place where it's going to be used. If it's not used in the next 4 down, but it is used in the one right next to it, because these really dark colors are coming across this way, these colors are not used down here, but they are going to be used in the square right next to it over here. So I'll park the thread over there. That's why there's some threads up here that are parked this direction. They weren't used down here, but because this strip is going this way, the next place they're going to be used is the square right next to it. So I just park it in the next place that it's going to be used. That's called the parking method. So that is why there's all these threads parked, because that's the next place they're going to be used. That's where all of these are hanging down right here. When I get over far enough and start on this next row over here, these threads are all parked. I know it looks like they're all right at the top, but they aren't. They are parked in the next square that they're going to be used underneath. Starting at the top, I pick the topmost symbol in that little 10 by 10 square because I'm always working from the top down. And when I get to this next square, it has some. If it's not used at all, then if I can't find anywhere that thread's used close by next, I just run it across the back, cut it off, and end it. So when I work on this next square right here, there's several colors already parked here. I will do those parked threads first. I'll just pick one, the topmost one. I'll pick it up, thread my needle on it, look at my pattern and figure out what symbol that is because I can see what square it's parked in. Look at the pattern, see what symbol that is. I just trust that that's really the color that that symbol is. I just trust that I parked it in the right place. Every once in a while I start stitching and think, I don't think this is the right color. So I'll actually check it against what it's supposed to be and realize it's not the right color. And then I don't ever go back and rip out. HAEDs are so, those tiny stitches don't matter. If it was a really dark mistake in a place that was supposed to be really light, just like a really bad mistake, then I can go back and stitch. Oh, I still won't rip it out. Ripping out this stuff is really hard. I would go back and stitch over the top of it with the right colored thread. It's so thick already you wouldn't even be able to tell. So I stitch all the parked threads first, and then there's always going to be some symbols that didn't have a thread parked there. That's the first time that symbol was used in this column. So then you just start a new thread, do all those, park it in the next place. So I always do the parked threads first, then I fill in the ones that didn't have a thread yet, that needed a new thread started, and that's how I do my HAEDs. But that does mean because all of these column threads are going to sit here and wait for this column to continue down, when I come up here and start this next new column, I have to start all new threads. That first square at the top of a column, there's nothing, well, this one actually does have a couple parked there because the stripe's going this way. But usually there's nothing parked there and I have to start all the colors over new because they're running down in columns. So this HAED is very wide. If I keep running across this way, clear, just did the first page, clear the top page, clear across the top like this, I would have something about, going to be this big. I would have a strip running across the top and threads down all underneath every single one of them. But then when you come down and start working on this, it's great because a lot of the colors are already parked right there where they're going to be used next. So that is why I get a lot of questions on why I have so many threads hanging down. So I thought I would take just a minute and explain how I do it. You really should go watch some more videos about the parking method and find there's about as many ways to do the parking method as there is to do Mania. So you definitely need to do your research or choose, and I would always recommend if you've never done a HAED before, that's a Heaven and Earth. Heaven and Earth Designs were one of the first companies that got really popular with these full coverage pieces adapted from artwork. There's lots of different companies. You do not have to do Heaven and Earth Designs. There's lots of them. And it just means full coverage, lots of confetti stitching, quite often adapted from a piece of artwork. In the stitching community, we've just started calling that a HAED. H-A-E-D stands for Heaven and Earth Designs. They're not all Heaven and Earth Designs. It just means full coverage, lots of confetti. We kind of use that term interchangeably, but it's not really. It's the actual name of a company, Heaven and Earth Designs, that specializes in this kind of stitching. There's as many ways to do a full coverage piece, just lots. So do your research, watch some videos. Brian at Blitzstitch, B-L-I-T-S-T-I-T-C-H, has a fabulous diagonal method that he uses. You'll have to go back to his earliest videos to see. He has 2 or 3 different videos spaced out where he explained the way he does it. Oh, Boss Daughter knows the name of another. Boss Daughter, when you watch this video, comment below. I know you know the name of another stitcher that does a diagonal method or has a great parking video. I can't remember if it was the diagonal method or the way you do it. Anyway, comment below and put that in. But really, you just do it the way that makes you happy. That's what you do. Okay, enough about that. Oh my word. Thursday, last one. That was yesterday. Today's Friday. Was a new start. I started By the Bay Needle Arts. That's the fabric sticker. You Are My Sunshine. This pattern was sent to me by Glow in Spain because she knew that Boss Daughter loves sunflowers so much. So I'm going to stitch it and give it to Catherine when it's done. I'm going to make it into a pillow. And I think Catherine might do some stitches on it as well. This is how far I am. Using the called for DMC, I'm using 3 strands of floss over 2 fabric threads. This is 28 count natural light linen. It's very stiff. It reminds me a lot of lamb's wool. And that is how far I got on that one. Today will be a WIP. I don't have a carryover WIP from a previous Mania that has to be worked on today, but I think these are my possible Mania start. These are my Mania starts, Mania projects that I haven't chosen yet. These 4 are WIPs. They were not original Mania starts. They're just WIPs out of my pile because I always include some WIPs in my Mania plans. And then these are all the new starts that I have left that I have not chosen yet to choose from. Today will not be a new start because I just did a new start yesterday. Today is going to be one of these WIPs, I think. And I haven't quite decided which one yet. That will be today. And the only other thing I have to talk about is on the 23rd, I believe it's the 23rd, I am starting this Blue Flower Huckleberry Farm with my friend Lonnie. I'm excited to start that. I decided to start that with her. It calls for overdyed. It calls for about half DMC, half overdyed cotton threads. I spent a while. I pulled all the DMC and pulled the DMC conversion for the ones that are that it calls for that are overdyed. Pulled out the ones that I had. I had a few of the overdyeds that it called for. A lot of them I didn't have. And then just started going through all of my overdyed cotton stash and matching colors up to the DMC color, or maybe what sometimes the DMC color didn't look like what I was seeing in this beautiful model photo. So then I picked a color that looked more like the photo to me. This house is a very yellowy green color. And I chose a yellow that didn't have so much green in it. It's more just a yellow color because I liked that better. The called for fabric is shale, which is not purple. It's a gray color. It may have a very slight lavender undertone, violet undertone, but it is not purple. This photo makes it look a lot more purple than the called for fabric is. But I love this purple fabric because it's Huckleberry Farm. And this whole border is huckleberries in some deep purples and mauves. So I decided to go ahead and do mine on purple, even though that's not what it calls for. Okay, I had this purple piece of fabric. It's a Silk Weaver Elegance. It was a lot darker than this, and I wanted it to be just a little bit lighter. It's actually lighter than it looks in the photo. This is making it look a lot darker. Okay, so I'm going to tell you what I did to this fabric to make it just a little bit lighter. But this is a total disclaimer. I had no idea what would happen to this fabric. I could have ruined it. So don't do what I did, and then if it ruined your fabric, you can't come back and blame me for it. Because I'm telling you, this is a total risk. Don't do it unless you're okay with the fabric maybe being ruined. Okay? Don't just do it because Brenda did it, so it must be fine, right? Okay. I took a huge risk, and most hand-dyed fabric is not color fast, and they will tell you that. This is not color fast. Don't get it wet. We don't know what will happen if you get it wet. So I ran it through the washing machine with the blue Clorox 2 for fabrics, not having any idea what I was hoping it would lighten it up and kind of mix the colors, the purples together just a little bit. But it could have taken all the color out. It could have taken all the purple out and left the dark gray. It could have ran the colors all together and made it a really muddy brown color. I had no idea what would happen to it. So seriously, this is a huge risk. Don't just do this thinking it's going to be that you're going to get a piece of fabric that looks just like this. Because depending on the dye or even depending on the lot, it may not work. So please don't blame me if you ruin your fabric. So I ran it through and it looked a little lighter to me, but it looked almost the same. So then I ran it back through the washing machine with OxyClean whitening. It's a liquid. It comes in a little jug. It's by OxyClean, and it's to whiten your whites. It's to help brighten up your whites. So I thought, oh dear, if I run it through with this, it might come out white with just some tiny stains of purple on it. I don't know. But it actually came out very nice. I love it. It lightened it up quite a bit. I think it's going to be perfect for this pattern. So that is what I did. But don't blame me if you try it and it ruins your fabric. It's just a huge risk. You have no idea what will happen when you put a hand-dyed piece of fabric in the washing machine with OxyClean or Clorox 2, okay? But I'm very happy. I'm excited to start this on the 23rd with Lonnie. I know you can't see them very well when they're in baggies. But these are the colors that I chose. The DMC colors that equivalent to those 3 dark purples that are in the border did not look purple to me. I was just like, oh no, I want it to be purple. I want the huckleberries to look purple on this purple fabric. So I chose, Williamsburg was actually one of the called for colors. It's a very, this looks red on camera, but it's not. It's a purpley, a mauvey, very mauvey purple. And then I chose Sampler Gentle Arts Royal Purple, which is very purple. If I could get the better color for you. And then I chose Classic Colorworks Plum Paisley. I wanted 3 purples that were very different from each other. They're not just 3 shades of the same color family. They're actually 3 different. This one's more of a red purple. This is a deep, dark royal purple. And this one is more of a lavender purple. But I think they look great together. Those are my 3 purples. Just pulled just looked through all the purples I had in my stash and just picked 3 that I thought looked good. So I'm excited about that. So I hope you have a great day. It's beautiful weather here, and I hope you get some time to stitch. Bye-bye.